IDC International Radio, 106.2 FM, from Israel to the world.
For all of our listeners out there, you're listening to 106.2 FM IDC International Radio. This is the Daniel Pearl podcast, the Peace Chain, more correctly, the artist edition of the Peace Chain, in which we bring artists and journalists from all around the world to talk to us about the world of journalism today and how they use their craft in order to build bridges and to provide a better understanding of the world we live in. In the studio with me is Siona Benjamin. She is an artist of many backgrounds, and she uses her complex identity to bring about very beautiful pieces of artwork that involve Indian, Muslim, Christian, and Jewish heritage to tell stories and different narratives. Welcome to the studio, Siona. So I mentioned a little bit about your background, but I think it's a good place to start in terms of your artwork, because it is very beautiful, colorful, full of different mythology, Christian, Muslim, Jewish. Can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing and where you grew up, just so our listeners can get an idea of where the idea behind your artwork is?
I was raised a Bnei Israel Jew in Mumbai. It was called Bombay. Mm-hmm. There were about 30,000 Jews in India at that time, and now there are currently about 4,500 Jews left in India. They've all left to go to Israel and other parts of the world. All my family are Jews, and I was raised very Jewish. My mother lit the Shabbat lamp every Friday, mm-hmm. and we observed the Jewish holidays till my grandmother and my uncles and all, left to go to Israel. Mm-hmm. I remember my childhood being, going to my grandmother's house and for the high holidays, and then eating food in her house, Indian Jewish food. And there are all these wonderful recipes and halwas and then walking across the street to the synagogue.
Yeah. So essentially you were a Jewish Indian living in a predominantly Muslim Hindu country.
Yes, and I remember also that ironically, it still is that way. Mm-hmm. The Jews and Muslims lived in very close together in the same part of the city. They also identified with each other because they identified themselves as being idol worshipping religions, and so Jews and Muslims actually lived very close together. And so the synagogue was close to the mosque, and my father, for example, actually he knew the call to prayer mm-hmm. by heart because he grew up listening to it. Yeah. My grandmother, my Jewish grandmother's neighbors were Muslims, and when she left to go to Israel, they all cried and were very sorry to see her go. Mm-hmm. And they were good friends. And India is one country in the entire world, I think, that there has been no anti-Semitism against the Jews. Mm-hmm. And
you don't hear about it a lot.
You don't hear about it.
And I think that's also part of the fact that a lot of people will be surprised to hear that there are Jews in India. It's probably something that you get a lot, I'm assuming. I mean, I don't follow that sort of mindset because I myself am a bit of a unicorn too. I'm a Christian Arab, and so for a majority of people, the way our world thinks is that if you're Arab, that you can't be you have to be either Muslim or you're not necessarily Arab if you're Christian. There's all these different things. And much like yourself, I don't feel like I have a very complex background as well, born in the US, that sort of thing. And so my identities tend to clash. And with your artwork, you have them coincide in a sense. How much of that was an important factor for you? Do you feel like finally you had a way to express yourself and sort of help people understand that this is me, this is my identity on a canvas?
Right. I mean, sometimes still it kind of clashes, especially when I'm put in the wrong situations or in the situations which are difficult.
Yeah.
I feel like, it's jarring that, you know, somebody would tell me, a Jew from India, how is that possible?
Yeah.
You know, and I tell them, well, I mean, all the major religions started in the Far East, Abraham biblically came from Ur, which is in Baghdad, and he did not come from Europe.
Yeah.
And it's written, and so it's like people have to be reminded about that to understand that. And the fact that the fact that you said that you're an Arab Christian, I mean, even Jesus Christ was a man from the Middle East. He was not, Charlton Heston,
Yeah.
Tall, blonde, and blue-eyed. So people tend to paint their gods in their own image.
Exactly.
And they tend to forget that, where the origins of that mythology came from. And then they want to compartmentalize, and they want to categorize. And I think that's the seeds or the beginning of hatred and violence and war.
True. I mean, we live in an era where everything seems to be very polarized.
Yes.
And so for something like your artwork, for those who are privy to it, at least, it's in the United States, it's been in Europe also exhibited, and it's been in Asia, now Israel, obviously. Where else can people see your artwork?
I mean, it's thanks to the social media and internet, it can be seen on many websites.
Yes.
And I have a gallery that represents me in New York, ACA Galleries, and they have it on their website. I have my own website. And so, because of this, it's really strange, even though there's so much of globalization and social media, and you'd think like the world would become more open and more tolerant, so to speak, more tolerant of each other. It seems like even though it's opening up in one direction, there still seems to be still polarized. And it's kind of a mystery why it is like that.
Yeah.
You would think that it would open up people's minds, but it doesn't seem to do that in some cases. It actually causes more conflict. But anyway, coming back, you can see my art, in many places through the internet, and also when they have exhibitions.
I'm thinking that you get a lot of feedback through those forums as well. I mean, how have people reacted, I guess, to your artwork?
Mostly, I mean, if they take time to read about it or to understand it, they have tended to like it. Some people are shocked or annoyed by the the different cultures being used, because they feel that each culture should belong in its own category and cannot be mixed, and there are no bridges and there are no similarities. When I see similarities all the time, they don't. So in that point, in that way, they would feel like, you're a Jew, why are you using, Hinduism as an influence? They are idol worshipping people. And I'm like, it's got nothing to do with that. It's about mythology. And besides, Hinduism is also not generally about idol worshipping. It's a misconception. They also believe in one God, which is Brahman. Just like in Judaism, there's Ein Sof, which is also the one God. And in Islam, there is, also the one God. In Hinduism, they don't worship. They believe in many incarnations of the one God. So again, it's a misconception that people have about Hinduism, for example. So without knowing that, they would come to these conclusions, and it's sad but true.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but the internet opens a lot of windows, and a lot of places. Sometimes you see like the dark parts of social media. But I'm back to your artwork. I mean, for me, as Christian Arab, who kind of has her identity with her religion in a sense, and where she comes from, and a lot of the times, a lot of the questions I get asked is, where do you feel is home? And I can't answer that, with a full, 100%, because part of me is in the US, part of me is here. And I think if people spent enough time looking into your artwork, they would see elements of their identity, I guess. If people are, trans cultural like I am, then they will see those elements in there. But for those who don't have that, do you think it's harder for them to understand the full meaning? I mean, for everybody, art is subjective,
Right.
but
Art is subjective, and you can't force anybody to like or not like it. But what I can say is that I encourage, if they say, "Oh, I don't understand the meaning of it," or "Why are you doing such and such thing?" I say, in anything in life, you have to learn about it. You have to spend time understanding it, reading about it, finding out about it, researching it. Then only you can draw conclusions about it. Without knowing anything about it, or without finding the time to spend time to find out more about it, you can't come to a conclusion. So your perspective is irrelevant, or does not affect me if you don't spend time actually finding out about it. And then you can come to conclusions and say whether you like it or don't like it, or why you don't like it. But if you don't do that, it doesn't make any sense. So like you said before, finding home for me was an initial series of mine, and I've come to the conclusion that there is no real home. You pitch your tent where you go, and that is your home. For me, I feel that is like that, and it can be a feeling of sadness, feeling that way, but on the other hand, it can also be a celebration, because you can enjoy every culture or every place that you pitch your tent. You can look at it that way.
Yeah. Right now, we're radio in a sense, and we can't necessarily see your artwork. It's not exactly radio friendly, but for those interested, you can visit the website. But can you describe at least one piece of art that you have made that really is your favorite? I guess it's difficult to ask, I know, of an artist, but at least the one that you think has had the most impact on people. Which one would it be?
I cannot say that there is one.
Yeah.
I have, you have many favorite children, right?
Yeah, it's difficult to
So
decide.
there is no favorite one. I can pick one out of the favorites that I have. I mean, randomly, not without any.
Yeah.
Since I'm in Israel, I've done a painting, which is many years ago, like in the early 2000s, which is called Sister, which is actually an embracing, like, one body but two-headed kind of Muslim and Jewish woman, and they are entwined together. They are both displaying their hands, and both the hands have got henna on it. Because I'm an Indian Jew, so we have henna in our ceremonies too, just like Hindus or even Muslims ceremonies. So there's a similarity there. So they're both displaying the henna of their similarities, and they are embracing, and they're like sharing almost one body, but at the bottom is this kind of bomb detonator, where right at their feet, you don't see it actually, and there at the bottom there are little drops of blood that are coming down, symbolizing that they are sisters and they are so connected, but at the same time, why are they destroying each other? And ironically, for many years that painting did not sell, but it was eventually, in the last couple of years, it was bought by a Muslim woman who was married to a white American, and was raising these transcultural children who were half white and half Muslim. And she purchased that painting, and I was very happy, and she's become I found a new friend,
Friend.
She's understood it, and she's embraced it, and it is in her home, so it's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have anything else to add to that. It's a beautiful story, and it's just one of the many ways in which art, and we use our mediums to our advantage and not have them take advantage of us in that sense. So really, thank you so much for taking the time to come in and speak with us for the Daniel Pearl Institute. Is there anything that you'd like to leave our listeners with? Maybe perhaps an upcoming project that you're working on, or anything? I'm
working on two current projects, to tell you really quickly. One is my Fulbright project. I'm here on a Fulbright fellowship for 4 months in Israel. That's why I'm here. I am photographing some of the 110,000 Indian, well, just a few of them, not that many, Indian Jews in Israel, and how they have assimilated. And my project is called From Motherland to Fatherland, Transcultural Indian Jews in Israel. And I'm photographing them and generations, like father, son, mother, daughter, siblings, and I'm doing lenticular prints where I'm overlapping the faces to show, like, if the child of the Bnei Israel Jew happens to be, if he's married to a Yemenite or any other Jew, what is the overlapping of his child's face on his face look like, and how the transculturalism sort of happens, and the change happens, and what are those changes? How are have they still kept their traditions from India, or how have they adapted to what is exactly is Israeli culture?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a little bit anthropological, but it's also going to be photographic art in that way, and I'm doing a big installation of it once I go back and finish the project. And I'm also working on another series which is called Exodus, I See Myself in You, which is about the concept of paradise and the current situation of the Syrian refugees. So I'm doing paintings, paintings based on how we allow or don't allow people into finding their own paradise or their own home.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much. It sounds beautiful and something to look forward to as soon as it comes out. So make sure, if you're listening, that you check out her website. We'll put the link in the description of this podcast. Thank you, Siona, for being here. And thank you for listening to 106.2 FM, IDC International Radio. My name is Yvonne Saba. Goodbye.